Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name's Pete Rawlinson. I'm a life and professional coach with Life Shift Coaching, and I'm going to spend 30 minutes or so today talking about a new approach to coaching employees and coaching leadership, coaching a business as a whole. I've been in the corporate world for over 20 years now as a marketer and a lot of experience working in different companies, different cultures around the world, um, and also experience in terms of creating a united brand, both internal to the organization as well as external. And that impinged quite a lot on culture, on values. And in doing that, I experienced quite a lot of challenges in business in terms of the way that businesses as a whole look at employees and not just mental health, but their kind of mental resilience of individuals and groups, and what impact that has on the business, and what opportunities can be realized when we really tap into what I call the whole person, as opposed to just a role. So the my approach is called the three principles, and I'll go into what I mean by that. But what's really important to know as we kick off this session is this approach to coaching, applying to individuals, to groups, departments, teams, and to a business as a whole, is somewhat different from a typical professional or business coaching approach. So I'm not here to look at personality types. I'm not here to assess how different types of characters interact in the workplace. There's plenty of courses and coaches that can do that, nor am I here to talk about performance. We're not going to be talking about goals, high performing teams, how to get that promotion, time management. That's again a different category of coaching that supplements what I do, but is not what I focus on. And finally, I'm also not here to be a therapist. I'm not here to, kind of delve into things that may have happened to employees in the past, and dredge up memories that may be impacting performance in the workplace today. As I say, my approach is called the whole person coaching, and really I take it a level down from um, performing tasks within the workplace, and look at what really drives all of us as human beings. And that is our thoughts, our thinking. How do we think about the world? How do we interpret the world? Because that lies at the root of a lot of the challenges that employees have in the workplace, especially today. Challenges such as psychological security, imposter syndrome, managing adequate work-life balance, dealing with conflicts of character. There sure are techniques to deal with this, but I'm going to go one step deeper than that and look at how does the human mind really work? Because if you think about it, a business is just basically a set of human minds interacting, right? And how those minds interact can make the difference between a really high performing and innovative, disruptive organization and one which is kind of stymied with low retention and low employee morale. And many companies have suffered from that, and we've seen the consequences of that. So if the intention of the business, as with all businesses, is to rapidly grow, succeed, leapfrog the competition, it's really about the collective mindset of the employees that constitute that company that's going to make that difference. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in terms of the three principles approach to coaching today. But let's first just take a step back and talk about, look, how does the human mind work, right? So I'm going to disconnect from business right now and just talk about how human beings operate, because any organization is just a collection of human beings, right? So we all have this kind of voice in our head, right? This kind of weird voice that's always talking, often negatively, often critically. And we all have this voice, right? I often think that if we could verbalize this voice as it's happening, we'd probably all be sent to a psychological, you know, I don't know, asylum or something, right? It's a lot of the time it doesn't make sense and it can spiral into these dark places that you really didn't intend it to go. In fact, you didn't even probably initiate the first thought. And we'll go into detail about how that happens, right? But thoughts like, my boss is out to get me, or I'm not good enough for this business. These are just thoughts that can occur in your mind with no volition from you whatsoever. Now, how does that happen? I want to get to the root of why that happens and a reason, because when people understand where this comes from, why these thoughts are happening, it can make a really big difference in terms of how you interact with others. One other note I'd say, just while we're on this slide, that voice that's in your head, you hear it, right? I can be in the shower in the morning and there can be 5 or 6 different thoughts occur within 30 seconds. Will the car start this morning? Will my team be on point for the big presentation today? But also, how did they get people on the moon? And um, why is the water temperature so cold today? All just random thoughts that just generate within a few seconds, right? I am aware those thoughts are happening. So I'm watching those thoughts. If I'm watching those thoughts, I am not those thoughts, right? I am observing them. So who we really are the observers of thought, not thoughts themselves. That's an important point as we go through the rest of the presentation, right? Because if we are not those thoughts and we're watching them, then because we have willpower, we can at any time step back from that thought and just watch it, not get engaged with it. But very few of us actually do that, right? So, so let's have a conversation around what thinking actually does, right? Because every emotion that we experience, good and bad, comes from a thought. Now, we may not be consciously aware of that thought. Oftentimes we're not. But every emotion is generated by a thought. So it starts with thought. Every action, the behaviors that we exhibit are driven by the way that we feel. Okay. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I have a meeting and with someone in the office and they're late. Now I'm not a big fan of tardiness at all, and if a few minutes late, kind of, all right, that can irk me a little bit, right? And I can start to get thoughts around this person is disrespecting me, this person has no idea of how important this meeting is to me. So that thought causes feelings of frustration, maybe a little bit of anger, right? Certainly dissatisfaction. Now, that may lead to a behavior that when that person finally shows up 10 minutes late for the meeting, I'll kind of take them to task on it, right? Why were you late? That's disrespectful. That's a behavior I wouldn't have exhibited if they'd have been on time and if I hadn't have had that feeling of anger. Now, what typically happens is that these behaviors, they actually feed into more negative thoughts. So continuing on that analogy, what if that person said to me, I'm sorry, my son was in trouble at school. I had to take a call. Totally understandable. That now generates a thought of guilt. I wish I hadn't lashed out so badly at that person, which generates that feeling of guilt and I know, again, more dissatisfaction, which leads to behavior that I might be a little bit different in the meeting that we subsequently have. This spiral happens to all of us, right? But the spiral, it happens for a while and then it moves on, right? So after that meeting, the feelings of being kind of either angry initially and guilty later will kind of dissipate and I'll just forget about it and we kind of move on. But very often, especially with very powerful thoughts, um, recurring thoughts, they generate this kind of spiral that stays with us, right? And if we stay in that spiral long enough, we start to create an identity out of it, right? Identity such as, I am not good enough for this company or for this team. Um, the classic one is imposter syndrome, right? They're going to see right through me one of these days. Or I'm a stressed person, I'm an anxious person, I can't manage my work-life balance. All these things become identities which self-reinforce. So you then start to generate more thoughts around being, I'm not good enough. And that can affect your performance. It can affect the way you interact with other employees. The fact is, you can break this spiral. You don't need to stay in it. Some people stay in it for years, maybe all of their career, and you don't have to. When you understand the mechanisms of how this works, you can break it. When you understand how the engine of a car works, you can fix it. This is just knowledge. This is not about tools and techniques. It's about just understanding how things work. So how does the human mind work? Well, the human mind has about 70,000 thoughts every day, right? That's a lot of thoughts. Some of them are conscious thoughts. Some of them are thoughts that we choose to have. Bear in mind that everything that we do, everything that we experience has to come from a thought. You can't look at a chair without the cognitive process of a thought around, I'm looking at a chair. That's the same with everything. Our whole experience in life, whether it's personal or professional, comes from what we think every time. So we can have conscious thoughts that are useful, proactive thoughts like, I'm going to make a cup of tea, or I'm going to go to a meeting, or I'm going to complete this project. They're very positive thoughts and very useful. In fact, they're the thoughts that keep us supplied with tea, but also thoughts that put people on the moon, that have allowed the human race to evolve to the point where we're at now. So very useful thoughts. Conscious thoughts make up 5% of those 70,000 thoughts we have every day. 5%. The other 95% are unconscious thoughts, thoughts that we did not choose to have. These are thoughts that our mind just generates. Why does it do that? Protection. The unconscious mind, which is hugely powerful, generates these thoughts to protect us from physical harm, right? It dates back to thousands of years ago, right? When we had to evolve a skill set that enabled us to stay out of physical danger, right? So our ancestors were worried about where they're going to get the next meal, shelter, whether they were going to get attacked by a saber-toothed tiger. So their minds had to come up with this processing mechanism that was not even conscious, right? It was just, I know that I need to stay away from the area where the saber-toothed tiger is. I know I need to take a weapon with me. I know I probably need to go in with a team of people. These things just evolved without even thinking about it because of a threat to physical security. Now, human society has evolved a lot faster than our minds, our unconscious minds have been able to support. So now that rustling in the bushes that could be a tiger out to get you is actually an email from the boss saying, can we meet at 9 a.m. tomorrow? We need to catch up. That reaction straight away is, oh, geez, what's going to happen? I'm going to get fired. Something's going to happen. I've done something wrong. And your mind will very quickly start to generate these what if scenarios based on the fact that it thinks it's going to be physically harmed. The unconscious mind knows no difference between a rustling in the bushes and an email from the boss. And that's what creates that panic mode that you get, the sleepless nights before the 9 a.m. meeting, which oftentimes actually becomes is a meeting saying you know, job well done, you're going to be promoted or a pay rise or something, right? Unnecessary worrying at 3 a.m. because of something that you have no control over anyway, right? So that's why we get these thoughts. They're rooted in time. They're rooted in past memories of trauma that gets recalled. Um, we are the result of every experience we've ever had. That makes us pretty unique, right? Think about how many experiences you have every day. Well, about 70,000, I'd say. Multiply that by every day you've been alive, and that creates a massively unique individual. So we all react to things differently, and I'll go into more detail on this later. But focusing on the past and what's happened is kind of pointless. The past has happened, can't be changed. And the person you are today is the accumulation of all of those experiences that you've had in the past. The only thing that's real, as you've probably all heard, is the current moment, right? The past is a memory you experience right now, but the past doesn't exist. It's gone. The future, by definition, doesn't exist. We don't know what's going to happen 5 years, 5 weeks, 5 days, 5 seconds from now. Nor do we have much control over that either. But the unconscious mind will conjure up every kind of what if scenario in an effort to mitigate any kind of physical risk to you. And that is that running mind at night. What if this happens? What if that happens? Spiraling into all kinds of dark places in an effort to protect you. But as we said before, even those thoughts, as they come across your awareness, because you're watching them, you don't have to believe in them. So I'm going to share with you a couple of analogies that may help. Certainly in terms of any time that you may get triggered at work, or you maybe having some more longer term concerns or challenges with either your professional or personal life. So the first one is a bubble machine. So we all, I think, had these, or we have them with our kids now, these electronic bubble machines, right? And there's a little circle there that goes around the detergent and blows out tons and tons of bubbles, right? Now, in this analogy, the bubble machine is your mind, and the bubbles are thoughts. So the mind is continuously throwing out thousands of thoughts. Some are conscious thoughts, some are subconscious thoughts. But the natural inclination of a bubble is just to kind of float away, right? Same with thoughts. That's actually the natural state. The innate state is just to fly away, right? And we just sit and watch them. It's fun. So a bubble might be, I don't know, like a lamppost you drive past in the car, right? Or an office you walk past in a building. The things that don't really stay with you, but of course, you have to see them to know what they are. That's a thought. Now, most thoughts are like that, but some thoughts are not. Some thoughts we decide we're going to grab hold of the bubble and we're going to keep it. You know what happens when you do that? The bubble grows. It gets bigger, far beyond the natural state of a detergent-based bubble, right? Not only that, but it grows more bubbles until it becomes some weird thing that you're desperately trying to hold, right? So with the analogy of the 9 a.m. meeting with the boss, that could very well spiral and generate bubbles that take you down a path like I'm going to get fired. I'm not going to be able to get another job. I won't be able to pay the mortgage. I'm going to lose my family. I am going to be destitute and living on the streets. Kind of ridiculous, right? That's what happens typically when we hold these bubbles. Just know for a fact that you can let go of that bubble at any time and just let it go past. Because most of those bubbles, even the ones you decide to hold on to, are fake. They're illusions. They're not real. So a bubble might be this person in the office is out to get me. They don't like me. They're purposefully making my life a misery. Now that may be true, but the thought you have about it generating the emotion that you're obviously a massively negative emotion there, you don't need to believe that. You can let it go. And we'll talk about how we do that later. Another analogy is a movie, right? Imagine that you're a director of a movie. You have written the script even. You are the camera person. You completely make this movie. It's your movie. You're making it yourself. And let's say it's a movie about you going to the zoo, right? You go into the zoo and you're going to pet the animals there, and it's going to be great. Sun's going to be out. It's going to be awesome. So you make this movie But before you release it, you have to give it to the special effects department because they want to make it a little bit more dramatic, a bit more entertaining. So you give it to the special effects department and they give it back to you. And when you watch it, you see that that visit to the zoo resulted in one of the animals biting your hand. Pain, blood, rush to hospital. Now that nice zoo visit movie has become a horror movie. You don't really want to watch it, right? In this analogy, not only are you the creator of this movie, but you are also the audience. You are watching this movie that you have created, and you are sitting in that audience terrified by what you're seeing, by what the special effects department is putting to the movie. Quite a lot of us sit in our own movies, scared to death, but just sitting there. What most people don't realize is that there is an exit door in that movie theater that you can walk out of at any time. There's nothing keeping you in the movie. So you can walk out of that movie theater, the movie can still run, that's fine, you're not there. You've walked outside into the sun, you can eat your popcorn outside instead. Everything that we experience in our lives is a representation of what's actually happening out there. Whenever we look at something, smell something, taste something, touch something, hear something, that's brought into our field of awareness. It's combined with all of those experiences that make up who we are right now throughout all our lives. And then it's represented back to you as reality. That's how it works. We are all watching a movie. And you know what? That movie isn't the same for everyone. And if we don't like the movie, we can walk out. I would let that sink in for a few seconds because it's pretty powerful when you realize it. And you can test this. We can talk about it, right? Every movie that's projected into every one of our minds is completely unique. When we think about the accumulation of all of our experiences that make up who we are, the filter then is used, the special effects department that comes into action in creating the movie is so unique. It's more unique than DNA, than a fingerprint, than a snowflake. So every experience that we've had makes us unbelievably unique. And then when you combine that with multiple individual minds, as you do in an organization or a team or a department, then those permutations of experiences become vast. Trillions and trillions and trillions to one. More than stars and galaxies in the universe. It's huge. So how can we expect then everybody to be in agreement about the same thing all the time? It's never really the case, right? Because we all see the world through our own pretty complicated individual filters. And this is one of the main things that affect business, that affects collaboration, that affects morale, is lack of genuine appreciation of how unique we all are. Now, we talked about this movie playing inside our minds and how unique everybody is. Um, I call that the inside out way of looking at the world, right? What's happening in the world is not only not the way we experience the world, but is also very unique to us, how we experience it, because we combine what we see and hear and touch and taste, etc., with who we are. And that's our inside out way of seeing the world. Okay. But most people don't see the world that way, right? They see it outside in. Most people, employees, teams, groups, leaders, actually see it that the world is causing me to feel the way that I feel. Now, what we said earlier is all feelings are generated by thought. And the thoughts that we generate are the movies that we play inside our minds. And they're completely unique to each one of us. Imagine you're driving down the road, a road near to your house, and you've got a friend in the passenger seat of the car, and you're driving past, and there's a tree-lined street that you're driving down. And in order to see those trees, you need to think about trees. Just for a split second, tree, 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 tree. Both of you are driving down the road, just experiencing trees. In a split second, you don't even know you're doing it. That's fine. That's how the mind works. But then you go past one tree, and this tree was a tree where your 4-year-old son climbed up there last summer, fell and broke his arm, had to be taken to hospital. For you, that tree is not the same as the other trees. When you see that tree, I'd say probably every time you see that tree, it generates a completely different thought pattern, resulting in a completely different set of feelings around it. Traumatic feelings, scared feelings, angry feelings. So that tree doesn't look the same to you as your friend sitting next to you who maybe didn't experience that same fall of your son. That person just sees a tree. So isn't that proof right there that two people can look at the same thing in quote the outside world and see something completely different and feel something completely different? That's an inside out way of looking at the world. But most of us experience the world outside in. So if someone we believe insults us at work, they caused us to feel like that. No, they didn't. They generated a movie inside of us by a thought that we had that generated an emotion of feeling insulted. That was all us. It was nothing to do with the person that generated or that gave that insult. And that's the case for everything. Every single thing that we experience in our lives, both professionally and personally, they're not happening to us. We are doing it to ourselves. It's all about generating thought. I uh, I used to drive quite quickly. I used to hate being behind slow cars, right? And in the road where I live, um, more often than not, I'd experience a slow car. I'd drive up to a slow car. My immediate thought would be, that person is driving slowly on purpose. They've seen me drive up to them quite quickly, so they've slowed down, and they just want to annoy me today. And I used to think that about every slow car. Massive coincidence if that was the case, but that's what my mind would think. I would generate a thought of they're doing this on purpose. That would generate a feeling of frustration and anger and dissatisfaction. It would often result in a behavior like just trying to move slightly to one side to show the driver that I'm trying to get past, even though on that road I really couldn't. And that really kind of got me really worked up, right? There was absolutely nothing to do with that car in front. The car in front may have been an old person driving to their hospital appointment, really scared about driving. Made worse now by the jerk of a driver behind trying to get past. That is all me. That has nothing to do with the driver in front. And that is the same with everything you experience. And it's the same as an individual, and it's the same as a group, and can be the same as a business. We don't experience the outside world. We experience a version of it from the inside. So let me just very quickly talk about the three principles, because that is the basis, and it's a well-established 20, 30-year, well-established principle of how the human mind works. It's in that respect, it is still quite new and is actually being adapted now by a lot of psychologists out there as a more rapid means of creating kind of more mental stability and freedom and creativity in people. I've used it with many clients, both personally and professionally, and have had profound effects on the state of mind. The three principles are mind, consciousness, and thought. And mind, starting with that, is more about kind of a more holistic mind, right? It's the mind of nature. It's the mind that enables your heart to beat, right? You don't have to think about your heart beating. There is an intelligence at work making that happen. Human body is made of over 3 trillion cells. That's more than stars in the Milky Way galaxy, right? And those cells are always duplicating, dying. There is an intelligence that's making that work. There's an intelligence that makes an acorn grow into a 200-foot tree from soil and water and sun. That is miraculous. We are part of that. We have that. We have that mind. We have that level of intelligence and creativity in each one of us, every single one of us. So imagine every employee in a business having that potential. And we never really tap into that potential. And the reason why we don't tap into it, not because it's not there, because it gets covered over. And I'll talk about that in a second. The second one is consciousness. And consciousness, just very simply, is our awareness, right? We talked earlier about we're the one that watches our thoughts, that watches those bubbles go by, that watches the movie. This is consciousness. This is what makes us aware of everything around us. So without consciousness, we couldn't experience this intelligence, this mind. We couldn't think without consciousness, and we couldn't feel without thought. Each one of these three principles is absolutely fundamental. Without one of them, we wouldn't be able to experience anything. And if we can't experience anything, do we actually exist? The third one, and the one that this presentation is really focused on, is thought. And thought is our rudder, right? It's our guide through life. Thought is a combination, as we've said, of conscious and unconscious thoughts. Some of them are driven by our free will, and some of them are driven by our subconscious need to protect. And also some elements of thought are driven by an innate direction that each one of us has in life, which is driven by this intelligence, this mind-based intelligence. When you combine these three, mind, consciousness, and thought, that is what powers every human being's experience in the world. So understanding this kind of recipe and the uniqueness of each one of us and these combination of these three things can lead to a much more profound understanding of the value and what's needed for each employee to contribute to the collective mind of the business. So how can this affect a business, right? We've talked about how the mind works and the fact that we live in an inside-out world, not an outside-in world. And just knowing that fact, that you can walk out of that movie theater, you can start to practice doing that. And you could practice with the very small things, right? But things like I've listed on this slide, right? So reducing stress and anxiety. If you think about stress, anxiety, some of the others, imposter syndrome, all of these things are generated by thought. They are not generated by someone causing you to be stressed within the organization. You are doing that to yourself. So if you start to practice just stepping back, letting go, and there are techniques to do this, very, very soon you will start to see these feelings dissipate. And when the feelings dissipate, you're able to access more of this kind of innate intelligence that we all have. That will open up all kinds of creativity for you. It will increase your morale. It will increase your ability to collaborate, even with those employees and colleagues who, let's face it, it can be difficult to get on with at times. When you're in a meeting and you're opposite someone who you don't really like and doesn't really like you, just know that all the feelings that have been being generated by that interaction is all inside you. It's all being generated by your thoughts, and you can let go of those thoughts. So what happens when you let go of these thoughts, right? What happens when you let go is, first of all, immediately you will feel more calm, more settled. You will feel less serious, which I think is even in business is important. It'll be more kind of playful, right? What tends to happen and what I've seen from my experience in coaching people and teams is creativity gets unlocked because all of that mental energy that was spent in holding these bubbles now can be used elsewhere. And its innate nature is to be creative, is to be curious, is to be inquisitive. It's very hard to do that when you're bogged down dealing with negative feelings and thoughts. So creativity can be unlocked, and the value to the business in terms of the employee, accessing the potential creativity of every employee and every group within that business is incalculable. It is massive. But first, we need to have an understanding collectively of how the mind works, which is what we're going through today. Work-life balance will definitely be improved because things just aren't as serious as they were. You can come home and apply the same mechanism of letting go in work as you can at home. And by doing this, by not taking things so seriously and letting thoughts go by, people will see a difference. Lots of clients have said to me that their family has seen differences in them, less stressed, less grumpy when they get home. So benefits all around to the employee, to leadership. Obviously, you know, there's benefits in terms of the leader themselves having more mental clarity, being feeling more. What I've experienced is leaders feeling more connected to their team, because when we look at the way the mind works, leadership starts to see employees genuinely as human beings, whole people, not just the roles that they inhabit. Conversations, check-ins tend to be um, more focused on how are you doing, how are you feeling. Obviously, what have you achieved, how have you performed is an important part of that check-in too. But how are things? How are you feeling? It's really important because that then will give you an indication of what kind of thoughts this person is having. Employees, likewise, are more likely to be more open with their leadership when they feel that there is a connection on a mental level between the two. I've seen leaders significantly change the efficacy of how they lead their teams just by understanding the way that the minds of their employees are working, because it's just the same as theirs. There is no difference. We all work the same way, right? It's things like conflict resolution when you know between two employees they're in conflict. As a leader, you know that these are just two movies going on. They're very, very individual, and you can deal with it on that basis. And if your employees also understand this approach and the three principles, you can have a conversation with them on that level, and it would make sense. So I've seen teams go from relatively dysfunctional teams with low morale to high performing, highly creative, highly motivated groups. In fact, examples to other groups within the organization. What has happened to these guys? They are on fire because they get it. They understand the way that things are working up there. And then finally, benefits to the business. Well, look, if you can improve the well-being of employees and tap into their creativity, do that on the group level, because again, businesses are minds interacting with minds. Then some of the benefits here, including obviously increased productivity. You have stronger leaders that really understand the mental and emotional kind of uniqueness of each of their employees, and genuinely understand that, right? Then what you can start, and this comes from me as a marketing guy, is your values and your culture genuinely get ingrained into the mental processing of every employee, because you know how that works, right? You can embed it into the movies, in every movie they play during the day within their working lives. And what can then happen is the mission that the business has, the brand that the business wants to create, is not just kind of hammered into the employees through posters and mouse mats, etc., but genuinely gets absorbed into their psyche because there's an appreciation of how the psyche works. I truly believe that some of the most successful businesses in the world that leapfrog the competition through massive innovation was due to a culture where creativity was valued and was imbued into employees by leadership and by the employees themselves. So the benefits to companies are huge. You can see some more here as well, and these will be during the coaching. We'd go through each of these and understand how it all links back to these three principles. So I'm going to wrap up very soon. I just want to give you a few kind of tips and tricks of how you can actually realize the benefit of doing this. Obviously, the coaching that we would work on would go into more detail about how you deal with this in certain scenarios, and maybe something tailored towards the challenges of your group or business. But here's a few kind of analogies that have certainly helped me and helped my clients over the years. The first one is the snow globe. I think you can maybe see the analogy here, but if you imagine the snow globe is your mind and the snow inside of your thoughts, the natural state of a snow globe is to have the snow at the bottom of the globe, so you could see, the snowmen and the fir trees that are in there, right? That's that clarity, that innate intelligence that we have inside of us, when you can see that because you're not clouded with all of these useless thoughts, then you feel and see just more clearly in your professional and personal world. But of course, most of us insist on shaking the snow globe. And when you shake a snow globe, the snow circulates, it gets cloudy, you can't really see stuff. If you just put the snow globe down and just let the snow fall, don't resist it, don't fight it, don't try and replace it with positive snowflakes. Just let it go, let it fall. You will start to see, I guarantee you, you will start to see more clearly. And it will impact the way you interact with others. Seeing it happen so many times. I love car analogies, so let's go to a speedometer, right? Many of us, especially at certain times during the day at work, feel like we are overthinking, right? There's so much going on. We can't think straight. If we were a car, we'd be driving down the highway at 200 miles an hour, right? Way faster than you really should. Now, what happens when you drive a car that fast down a highway? Well, firstly, it's dangerous, not just to you, but to other drivers. Secondly, you have to focus on the road immediately in front of you. You can't spend time looking around at all. So you're not enjoying the journey. You're just trying to white knuckle through it. Life wasn't meant to be like that, by the way. Also, a car driven at 200 miles an hour for any prolonged period of time, eventually you're going to get a warning light on that engine. Eventually, you're going to burn out the car. You're going to burn out the engine. And that's what happens when we experience burnout in our professional lives. We literally just can't travel down that road anymore. And that can affect you physically, can affect you psychologically, emotionally. It could be career ending at times. And it doesn't have to be like that. You don't need to drive a car at 200 kilometers an hour. You just don't. So just imagine reducing the speed. Reduce the speed to 20, 30 miles an hour. Then it's not quite as white knuckle. You can start to really enjoy the ride, see things that you hadn't seen before. That will give you maybe more ideas, more inspiration, more ways in which you could possibly contribute to the business. And of course, you're not going to get an engine light. That can go on for a long time at that speed. It's just a nicer journey. Staying on car analogies, you see those rumble strips there? We're driving down the highway and sometimes we veer off the main line and we hit a rumble strip, right? And the steering wheel vibrates. Using that analogy to how our mind works, a rumble strip is a strong emotion, typically a negative emotion that is not just there for the sake of it. It's there to protect you. It's a message from your psyche to say, you're going off course a little bit. Please course correct. You should not have bad feelings all the time. So when you do get bad feelings, let's investigate what that is. Ultimately, it's just down to a thought. Where's the thought come from? And deal with it that way. And that will be moving away from the rumble strip. Don't look on these negative feelings as purposefully negative. They are there to help. Um, the clouds in the sky, I'm sure you guys can see this analogy too, right? Is who you really are, regardless of what role you have, a CEO or a janitor, it doesn't really matter. Every role you have in a business is just part of a person that you are. And that whole person that you are, our true selves, with the sun, right? The blue sky that's always there. It's just obscured by clouds. And clouds, by their very nature, just go past the sky, right? Even bad thunderclouds. Thunderstorms just go by. But we sometimes insist on holding on to those thunderstorms, staying underneath them, where we get drenched in rain, maybe hit by lightning sometimes. You don't need to. Let the weather be the weather. That's what life is all about. It's part of the human experience. Sometimes a thundercloud is here to test us, to see how we're going to react. That thundercloud could be a challenging experience at work. Let it go. Okay, I'll wrap up, but I just want to leave you with 3 points from this session. Um, First of all, and I've seen this firsthand, the benefits to the business, especially if you combine it with some performance coaching, but the benefits to the business of individually and collectively understanding the nature of human thought, which is what drives a business at the end of the day, is hugely beneficial at every level, employee, leadership, and the entire business. As I've said, this coaching approach is not necessarily performance-based, right? It's not about the traditional coaching approach. It is very different. It is more psychological, but it gets to the root of what it means to be a human being. Whether you're at home watching Netflix or in a meeting about a project, you're the same person. We all are. And in that respect, this coaching helps people personally as well as professionally. There's no difference. We are the same person, whether we're at home or at work. So I've seen professional clients have significant impact in their personal lives too. So in terms of what LifeShift coaching can offer, we obviously offer multiple levels of coaching, individual employees, departmental or group project-based coaching, and leadership coaching. So yeah, newlifeshift.com is the website. Please go there and fill in a form if you want to chat a little bit more about this. I do have some time available to help other businesses. So yeah, I look forward to hearing from you, and get in touch if you just have any questions or if you need some clarity on it as well. I'll be happy to talk. I hope you've enjoyed the session, and you take care. Bye-bye.